You ready?
Yeah. So yeah.
So you were saying a lot. That was good. That was good. I'm curious. I know you asked me a question about minds, but I'm still curious about elaborating on yours in terms of habits. So what
Mhm.
I understand from you right now is that there's those three domains, which is probably very similar to me as well. You know, those three domains in which to build New Year's resolutions. I probably have a little different one, like specific pieces within those domains, and I have various habits that I love. So I love habits. I love scheduling things in because it just builds these habits.
Right.
So I'm curious as to what are some of the concrete examples you have, or concrete examples of habits that you have for certain things. What's the first thing you started with? Personal fitness. Yeah, should we start with that?
Yeah, like health. I think overall health, right?
Yeah. So what kind
Um,
of habit
mhm.
have you built or
Yeah.
plan to build for that?
Yeah, it's actually funny because I think it's like the first or second year in pharmacy school that I sort of learned about this. I didn't realize I was learning about habits at the time, but um, so one of the main counseling points, as a pharmacist to our patients is, medication adherence is a big thing, right? So making sure that patients are being compliant with the medications. Some of the simplest strategies or tools you could use to build a habit is for the patient to keep your medication near, for example, your toothbrush, right? So brushing your teeth is probably built into majority of people's habits. Well, taking that one step further and keeping your pill bottle, medication bottle next to your toothbrush allows you to then schedule taking maybe your nightly medication at the same time as you're brushing your teeth at night, right? Or in the morning. And so that just sort of sparked a, I guess, a habit, a positive impact in my life, which is, making sure if I want to get rid of a bad habit, I can use the same strategy, and that was checking my phone before I go to sleep at night, right? So um, keeping my phone away from me actually helped me build a better habit because I now kept my phone in the bathroom. It's literally sitting on my bathroom counter at night, away from my bedside, and well, yeah, it's kind of yeah. You laugh, but it's like what was kind of interesting about that was I am literally no longer getting on my Instagram, no longer getting my Facebook. 10 o'clock, 11 p.m. at night, and I'm actually using that time to either meditate or to read a book or just to kind of slow things down, and I actually get a better sleep hygiene out of it. So that's really helped me in the short term as far as getting off my phone before I go to sleep. But long term, I think that's going to build a really good habit for getting better sleep, being more energetic when I wake up. And mind you, you're keeping your phone away from your bedside when you wake up. What's the first thing you do when you wake up, right? Like if the phone is right next to your bedside, like flip that sucker on, right? And it's gonna be like prime time news. It's gonna be your Facebook feed, whatever. It's no longer as much of a risk now. So
so,
I think
so I'm curious because you brought up trying to get off your phone and stuff. What is your smartphone usage? Because do you ever look at the tracking?
yeah. So that's another good point. I enable
You
my
have some
social
questions,
media.
Beju, on the chat.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, yeah, I'm glad I'm getting the validation. You're right. I mean, I feel like this is a problem for a
A lot of
lot of
people.
folks, a lot of people. Thank you, SH. I'm actually uh, more in line with checking my phone at scheduled times during the day. So I actually put on my calendar, I put times, block off times so I can go into my social media now. It's not working consistently, I have to say. I'm still checking my phone during the day, but even something simple as like putting, an hour in your schedule that you will go into maybe your LinkedIn profile, or your Facebook, it can help a lot. But I think, again, going back to, you have to build that good habit and then try and remove those bad habits, if that helps.
Yeah.
So
And
what do you do, Brian? Like, what's your
I'm gonna try to find a thing here. So I believe, I think, so I've done this. I learned this from. I was thinking about it the other day. So in pharmacy school is hectic. We all know that. There's like a quiz and a test like every week, and it's so insane to keep up. And pharmacy school was the very first time I started to using calendar. And so I use this Google Calendar to manage when things are, so I can get a big picture view of like what's coming up. As I shifted into residency and then into a go live schedule, there's just so many tasks to track and so many things to get done, both in professional and personal life. And I firmly believe that if you want to get things done and be efficient and be productive, you have to schedule it on your calendar. So, what I want to show is, let me see if I can find one here. What I have done with here's one. One of the most difficult times this last year actually was when I was balancing my internship, school, and work. And I had to make sure I meet the deadlines for every three of those things. So I have internship deadlines, I have school deadlines, and I have work deadlines. So what I've did there is I scheduled everything in, and I'm going to show you my calendar. Just make sure there's no other things in there. Here it is. Do you see my calendar?
I don't see it, but
Do you see it now?
let's see if I can. I
How's that?
don't. I see a window coming up, but it's not over the screen yet.
Oh, look on YouTube.
Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay.
So basically, I schedule in sleep, and every minute counts. So I would schedule in sleep. I know exactly what time I wake up, and then it becomes a habit. I
Yeah.
go take the subway to work. I go to work, do my work related things, start my work day after the internship, and then I go to work. I do work. Then I come back. I eat dinner. I do school. Go to sleep. Rinse and repeat. And what this looks like eventually is I try to schedule in as many things as possible. Where, let me see if I can find a more recent one where I schedule in all these things. So what time I wake up, what time I eat breakfast, what time I eat dinner, what time I do. So these are all recurring tasks. So I have tasks where we have our weekly meetings, tasks where I spend dedicated time for family, schedule things for meal prepping and laundry and cleaning. So everything becomes as efficient as possible. And so there's not a lot of downtime. But that's one of the ways I do. So the key
Yeah.
thing here is scheduling in your time for things that you deem is important.
Brian, I really like the fact that you scheduled in checking your email. I just saw that on your schedule. I was like, that's brilliant. But yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like you're doing a better job than I with scheduling a lot of your tasks. Um, Email, I would say, is probably one of the, as far as work goes, at least, that's been one of the most um, biggest areas of improvement for me. And since I've started scheduling, I think I schedule either 2 or 3 times a day just to check my email. What I've found is I actually have almost half my time in checking email during the day. Literally, there's this book called The Hamster Revolution. It's like a short, like 1 hour, 2 hour read, tiny little book that goes into like all the strategies you can do to help with your productivity in terms of emails or using email and communicating to others. But I think what I'm kind of curious is if you've scheduled your email blocks, do you find that you your response from others has also been reduced? Like, how do you tackle that sort of the issue of email being sent and then you get like two or three emails back based on that one email you sent, and then how have you decluttered your email stream, I guess, or inbox? Like, what have you?
And I have to say that email isn't perfect right now. Even though I schedule it, it's not. I've been trialing different things, and it hasn't been super great because usually I respond to email fast, and that's not always a good thing. And not that it's a bad thing,
Right.
because if you respond to email fast, you set up a
Mhm.
culture where people
Mhm.
expect faster responses.
Yes.
And once I started to respond less and schedule in time, it certainly did change the culture. It takes time, obviously, but
Yeah.
after like a few weeks of doing something like that, it it became natural where they didn't expect it as much. But the thing that I have a hard time with is I still must make sure I scan through emails to know when something is emergent.
Yeah. So
But
you kind of triage a little bit.
yeah, I do a little bit of triage. Sometimes there are some things that are certainly important, but then again, if something
Mhm.
is super important, you should be able to just call or page
Yes.
for something like that too.
Yeah.
But
So actually, what's interesting, like the fact that you said that makes me really happy. One of the things I've done is in my email signature, so my like auto response back, I've actually added like two notes. I've said, all right, I will only be checking my email two or three times a day, right? Upfront, give them the expectation that this is not something that you'll get immediate response from. So set up that expectation up front was key. But then the second piece to that was I actually said, okay, here, if you truly need me, here's what you can do. And so, like, if you have my cell phone, please give me a call or come up to my desk. Or if you don't have my cell phone, in a polite way, say, this is where you can get a more immediate response, which is like usually for us, it's the help desk
mm,
or a online portal that we use through ServiceNow to actually resolve some incidents. So I feel like giving them a way to solve their problem, I think, is key. But also setting that expectation up front has been huge. It's been huge in my world because, as you know, Brian, like in pharmacy informatics, like just in general, people expect you to fix their problem, and it's almost like you're a magician, right? But sometimes, our users don't know truly what kind of, what behind the scenes, what it really looks like, how much work is involved in some of these solutions. And so it may seem immediate to them, but it's really not in some cases, right?
yeah, it's a tough. It's definitely very difficult to manage. And I don't know if it's a easy topic to expand upon, but
Right. Right.
email in itself, I'm still trying to figure out the best way to fix that. And I think when it comes to like, if you want to go to the professional sense and talk about how to manage user expectations, I think one of the key areas that everyone would be interested in talking about is how do you troubleshoot or triage tickets that get sent overnight when someone's on call? Like, what is a high priority issue that needs to be fixed right now versus something that can be
Right.
done tomorrow? Because on the end user side, let's say you're an overnight pharmacist or overnight nurse or overnight physician, and there's
Mhm.
some issue that you're trying to fix right now. Oh no, my background changed, and I need this fixed, and it gets whatever reason gets routed as a high priority issue, and this poor person on call gets called at like 3 a.m. in the morning because
Right.
their background changed, and it's like you just woke me up because
Right.
you want this fixed. Um, Obviously, that's a poor example, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just
Right.
saying, like, how do you effectively triage those kind of things? Because Because I feel like that always comes up. And what are things that can wait till the very next day? And I feel like there's many things that can wait till the next day. For example, let's say a nurse can't get a med out of Pyxis, and many times you can just go on override and pull certain things out. You don't need to wake someone up and use resources to do some of that. You can save some of those resources for more emergent things, like if the entire Pyxis server shut down, something like that. But
Yeah.
anyways, that's too far into the professional side. I'm interested in like
Well,
personal.
yeah, absolutely. And well, I think it sort of just speaks to the fact that, regardless, like personal, professional, like you have to build good systems, right? You have to design good systems that, and in an environment that works for you. Um, and so I guess going back to, like the habits, I think that's a big part of it. I don't think that's the full equation though. I mean, I think the environment also, there's a lot of emphasis on like creating an environment that is conducive to that, right? So um, I think Matt Deval, he's done some good things with building this environment of, you know, making him more productive. I can't think of exact examples, but personally for me, it's being making sure I have a good support system, right? So um, whether it's at work where you have a great team, you have team building, and you have a team that really is supportive when the time arises, or if it's at home, where you have that family support system or the friend support system that um, can help you achieve the goals you want to achieve. I think one of the biggest um, pieces for me in 2019 was just being part of a amazing group of pharmacists through Pharmacists Connect. Regina Moore set up a Slack group for pharmacists, and I think that has been a really great way to find like-minded folks who.
That started in 2019, huh?
I think it was 2019. Yeah, I think maybe
Or was
it's
it
20.
2018?
It might have been in late 2018. But it's got a lot of traction in 2019, and
Because I remember that group starting right after one of our mid years. Was that the 2018 mid year?
that's right. That's right.
It
That's
might
the
have
same
been.
year I lost my wallet, by the way, which is hilarious.
That was the mid year.
That was a
2018.
big year. Yeah,
If that was
yeah.
the case, then it was just 2019. So Slack has only been around for a year.
For
Really?
for pharmacists. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's crazy. I feel like Slack's been around for a while, even though I'm not a heavy consumer of Slack myself.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think it's been pretty good because it started. I think Regina essentially her intention was to start off with just finding other pharmacists
mhm.
because she was remote herself, and so just connecting with other pharmacists was the true intent. And I think she's done a great job meeting that goal. But she's also helped others connect with like-minded pharmacists too. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing. Too bad I haven't taken advantage of it as much. I definitely was on it in the beginning more so than I am now. Just got too busy with school. But,
but
um,
it says a lot about like creating that environment
mhm.
of a support system of where you can kind of fuel your personal journey and help others fuel their personal journeys
So,
and grow.
yeah, I mean, she's definitely done an amazing job with that, especially creating that environment.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'm curious about some of your outcomes. So we talked about, the importance of habit, which we both agree on, and then we talked about even concrete examples of like leaving your phone in the bathroom so you don't use
Right.
it. But I'm curious about outcomes now too. So what is the purpose that you have in decreasing your smartphone usage? Like why? Why are you interested in that? Like what are you gonna why are you
Yeah.
doing that?
Yeah, it's a good point. So I think one of the problems with smartphones is that you spend an inordinate amount of time just consuming content, right? Like, so
Did you have your usage by the way? Did you
uh,
have a chance to check that?
let me check it out. So
I'm gonna check mine out right now too.
screen time. It's probably gonna be horrendous. All
I
right.
huh. That's not too bad. Mine dropped a little bit. All right, well, go ahead. What is your? Let's look at what is your weekly average.
Oh wow. Okay, so this may be a bit of an outlier because of the holidays, but my social networking. I don't know if I can show this to the group here.
Oh, there it is. Whoa, 6 hours on your daily average?
Can you
And
see that? I don't know if you can see that on YouTube,
yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
you can actually see it, and that's a 31% decrease. So you actually have more. And what I didn't see the social networking. What was your social networking?
21 hours.
Wow. Okay, so this is
So
mine.
wow.
Can you?
So
I don't.
3 hours.
Can you see mine actually correctly or no?
Yeah, yeah. So you've got 4 hours today, right?
Daily average over
Oh,
the
15
week,
hours. Okay. Okay.
but 14 hours towards. And you see most. So most of it's actually YouTube. I don't know if you said that's my number one is YouTube.
Okay.
And part of the reason why I think that that's higher is because um, I like to listen to music in either the morning. Actually, no, I like to listen to things on YouTube. So it's either Matt Diavella motivational videos or music when I wake up, when I'm in taking a shower, and
Right.
then throughout the day. I just have YouTube playlists on all day throughout the day. So I think a lot of my usage is inflated because of that. I'm not actually
That's
using it. It's just, on the background.
yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. So like YouTube is sort of like the Spotify or the
Yeah.
sort of kind of yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I'm not sure why I'm getting like a spike in Facebook. I guess it's because I recently set up my Facebook account again. So maybe maybe I need to learn kind of draw back from that. But
I wish I knew. I don't remember. I actually had stats on the average use of um, social media between Android users and Apple users. Apple users was way more. I think the average was like 7 hours for Apple, and then like 9 hours for like Apple, and then like 7 hours for Android. It was like a national average or something like that. Very
that
interesting.
yeah, that would be good to get some data, personal data, how it benchmarks against national or average. That would be a worthwhile outcome too. So going back to your outcomes, I think that would be a good outcome to actually dig into this data I have and compare and then see how I do maybe a month or 3 months down the road.
So, I mean, I didn't mean to interrupt because I was in the beginning. I mean, I was in the middle of you answering the question of what is the outcome like? What is the reason you want to
Yeah,
decrease?
yeah. So I guess for me, it's reducing consumption equals maybe putting more work into something intentional, right? So whatever that intentional concept is for me, it should feed into one of my three domains or my three goals. That's either health, it's creativity, or it is, I would say, financial investing or personal finance. So um, I think I think the creative part of my domain is one area where I can maybe talk about. So I'd like to get more reading in 2020. That's really I'd like to read nonfiction as well as fiction. Um, and I can't remember the last time I picked up a book and just read like a sci-fi or a fantasy novel, right? Like that's one thing I've did when I was a kid growing up, and I was a voracious reader back then, and now I'm just thinking to myself like I haven't picked up a single book last year, on a nonfiction sort of book, and I'm sorry, a fiction book, and so I just feel like that's something I've left out of the equation solely because I've just been consumed with content. So um, that's a goal I have, a real goal I have for 2020 is like I'm gonna read one book, at least one book, and if I can do that, that's an outcome I'd
For
be happy.
one book the entire year?
Like seriously, that's all I'm starting with. And going back to the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, that's what he stresses. He stresses like going to an outcome where you're only looking at the starting line, right? Like it's the same thing as like if I was painting my house. So I painted my house like 5 years ago, right? I painted my entire house. It's like this really great looking light gray color. And what was funny was like I picked up all the equipment, the paintbrush, the paint cans, all of that. Like I spent I think 200, $300 on it total. And it was like sitting there for like 2 months. It's horrible. I was just like, what am I doing? This is not productive at all. So one day, like one weekend, I just said, all right, I'm just going to make an effort. I'm going to look at the starting line, right? I'm going to look at painting one wall in my dining room, just like literally one wall, right? And I'm going to start there. And if I can do that this weekend, I'll be happy.
There-
And what was what was funny with that was I actually ended up paying probably my entire kitchen that whole weekend because I got so pumped. I built that momentum. I was so pumped I could do it. And within probably about 3 weekends, so a total of 3 times every weekend, I painted my entire house. And I saved, I probably saved like $3,000, $4,000 as well. So it was just funny, like, these small habits, these small like goals you have, they really build that momentum that take you on to maybe completing more than you expected you would. So that one book I have, for 2020, that one book goal,
yeah.
that's maybe the starting line. That may just be one outcome, but it may lead to maybe 5 books that year. I don't know, but the fact that I can build that momentum.
There's a TED talk on that whole topic that you just
Really?
thought, like starting small. I don't remember
Yeah.
what it was, but um, I think
You
it
know,
was like something about building anything, and it was very fascinating because I think the TED talk started about all the major crazy things he did. It was like insane, and they're like, well, anyone can do it. Oh, I think the first example he might have used was like this amazing painting, and he showed everyone, and he was like, "Do you
yeah.
think you can do that?" And I was like, "No, I definitely can't do that." And then what he does is continuously zooms into that picture all the way down to 1 pixel. He's like, if you can paint this square, you can do this whole
Right.
thing. And then the rest of the TED talk goes into um, uh, goes into all the different big projects he's taken over his lifetime. And it's like you start small and you
Right.
can create these big things. And the best example that I usually think of is what Will Smith said in one of his conversations one time. Is that he said his dad taught him not how to build a wall, but lay down a brick. You lay down brick by brick, and you lay that brick the best you can. And one day, you end up building a very strong wall, which you
Right.
don't imagine right away, but all you think about is laying down that one brick the
Right.
best you can, and eventually you have this big wall. Um, but
That's a good way to look at it. I mean, in another way, I guess, Brian, is like, looking at it from there's another great book called The Lean Startup, right?
yeah,
And it talks, you've read this, Eric Ries, great book. I think they call it the Bible of startups, right? So they talk about this minimal viable product, like MVP.
hmm
Creating MVP for like a business idea, it's literally creating a place, a very starting line of where you can find the most amount of value for your customer. And that could be as simple as creating a survey, right? So it was interesting that, we kind of went down this route of starting the Pharmacy Informatics Academy and starting with simply a survey to figure out where the best value is for, you know, our pharmacy students or pharmacists. And I feel like that sort of is a good tie into maybe some of these components of like where do you find these outcomes? It's actually you don't focus on the the outcomes up front. It's the very initial piece of you get started somewhere. Just get started is like the
yeah.
biggest key. But then building a momentum to
And
the
I'm gonna
outcome.
pause real quick. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Okay.
Right
Let's do
back.
it. It looks like we have like a few viewers on online. Here's we have a few viewers online. I wonder who's
Who? What?
jumping on the live stream.
Oh, yeah. I'd be curious if whoever's on the live stream, if you want to say who you are, be curious to know who is watching. But back to your point, I actually will offer a different perspective. Not that it's right or wrong. It's how I like to view things. Is usually like starting with the end in mind per se, but doing it in chunks. So using that same wall example, it's like I want to build this grand wall. Let's use the Great Wall of China. You know, it's like
Hmm.
if someone said you're going to build the Great Wall of China, it's like wow, that's a monumental task. But if you say I'm just going to build the first 10 bricks of the wall, you know, and that's like okay, that's not too bad. It's just 10 bricks, but the idea here is thinking about the end goal and then building
Okay.
towards it. So I would
Right.
usually like to think about what is the end goal and then chunking it out if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's like actually think about what is your timeline as well, right? With the end goal. So
Hmm.
like if I don't know, like when I first got out of pharmacy school, I was only looking at like the 5 year horizon, like or the 2 year horizon. Like I was like, well, I'm not going to go through residency, so how can I build a career, a professional career that's what I want. But I was only looking at it from a perspective of like, what am I going to be in 2 years' time? Well, what if you, and I think this is what I'm trying to do more now is like, what if you can look at it from perspective of what is my life and my legacy going to be,
Huh.
in 10 years or in 15 years, and you've extended that timeline, then perhaps your goals are going to be bigger. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's hold on to that thought because now
Okay.
I'm curious.
Okay.
You got me curious on that, and I do want to share this piece. And part of it was kind of a leading question in some ways, but as you were talking, it made me think about this. We're talking about outcomes, like why do we want to build habits? And for me, a lot of it is efficiency. So you have time to do a lot of other things. And this post, I think, came out a little bit ago. Oh,
Okay.
actually, no, I take that back. It came out a while ago. But there's so many different variations of this. And basically, do you see my screen?
Um, Not yet,
Maybe on
but
YouTube?
let's. There's a bit of lag. I think that's probably what it is.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
YouTube has a little bit of lag. So basically, the idea is conceptualizing, or not conceptualizing, visualizing the
Oh.
life of us as humans visually.
Mm.
And when you do that, it's very interesting. So the example they use here is 90, a human life is usually 90 years. And so they visualize it here on the screen here. And then they go through and say, this is what it looks like in months. It's crazy because, like,
Yeah.
when you look at it visually, and
Right.
then I think this guy was 34 years old, so he's gonna visualize like how much of his time he's already used. And this one is, let me see, yeah. Then he does it by weeks, and then he does it by days, and it's like, wow, this is all the time I have left in this world, and this is for a 90-year old lifespan. And so what's scary about this is I'll try to get to the meat of it. Is I'll use a couple examples here. He says here, I'm 34, and let's be optimistic and say I'm going to live until 90. That means he only has about 60 winners left and maybe 60 Super Bowls left. And then he talks about how many more books he's going to be able to read. So in this
Hmm.
example, he says if he reads 5 books a year, and it seems like you can read an endless amount of books in the future, he actually is going to have to choose only 300 books out of all the books in the world on what he wants to spend his time on. And that, to me, that blows my mind because
Wow.
and that's assuming you read 5 books a year until the rest of until your life ends. But
Yeah.
what's very interesting is when he goes towards the end and he starts talking about the time spent with your family and friends. And he uses the example of his parents. He says the majority of your childhood, you spend pretty much all day of your life with your parents. They're taking care of you of all that. And then when you go off to college or you go to residency or you go to other things, you only go back maybe during the holidays. And in one
Right.
picture, he shows all the time he has left with his parents, and it's very starking because when he estimates how much time he actually goes back home to visit his family, this is all that remains. And at 34 years old, with a 90-year-old time span and going back like 2 or 3 times a year, he's already used up 93% of his in person time with his parents. All he has
That
remaining is
is
5%.
that is crazy. That is
And
that mind
it's
blowing actually.
it's so interesting. So he ends the article with 3 points. Living in the same place as the people you love matters, because you're closer, you can spend more time with them. So where you choose to live and maybe where you go work makes a difference. And then to our point where we're talking about habits, priorities do matter. How do we make sure we prioritize the things that are important to us and deprioritize things like checking the latest Instagram post, you know? And then the last one is quality time matters.
Right.
Make sure you spend good amount of quality time with those people that you care about. And I think that for me is what sets up a lot of why it's important to be efficient, why you want to build good habits and things like that. So
Yeah,
um,
it's actually it kind of it's kind of insightful, but also a little it's a little scary to think about sometimes, like how much finite amount of time you have to do all the things we want to do. But then, Matt Davella, I think, came out with the video, The Art of Saying No. And I'm sort of now realizing that, like, saying no to probably 8 really good ideas out there has to happen if you want to kind of be a bit more intentional and spend more time with family, or maybe travel where you want to go, read the books you want to read, because time is limited, and it having that focus, that clarity to figure out what you want and the why behind that, I think is much more important, especially as you get more towards mid-career, right? Like us, and maybe towards the phase where you're ready to really leave behind a large legacy, but also you want to make an impact in the world, but you also want to make sure you balance that out with the relationships you've got. And
yeah. And this is kind of related tangentially. Casey Neistat just posted a video about this that I thought was very fascinating. He talked about his little kid. I don't remember how old she was, less than 10 for sure. He talked about his life. I think he's like 38 or 39, and he talked about the life of his grandma, who passed away, I think, a year or two ago. And he says,
oh,
when you're younger, he keeps asking her questions, and she's like, I think about the future. And I thought it was so interesting. So this is a timeline, and pretend this is like 0 years old and this is like 90 years old. And he's
yeah,
like, he drew his stick figure and he's like, what do you think about when you're at this age, like 9? And he says, all you pretty much think about is the future, what you're going to do, what you're going to grow up to be, all the things you want to achieve. And then as you progress, you think about both sides. You think about the future and you reflect on the past. So then he used himself as an example. He's like thinking about, what does he want the future of his YouTube channel to be? What does he want his future career to be? And he thinks about all the accomplishments that he's had, creating this whole vlog space and creating
right.
all the different things he's done, all the companies he started. And he talks about his grandma. He's like, hey grandma, and it was a video of her when she was like 90 or 91 years old, her birthday. He's like, what do you think about in the future? She was a dancer, by the way. And he was like, what do you think about the future? What do you want your future to be? And she said something along the lines of, I don't really think much about the future. I think about today. And I think about, how grateful I am today and how I'm able to spend
Yeah,
time with people like yourself, like Casey, like her grandson. And
yeah,
I don't know, like that, like I said, this is a very tangential thing. I just think it's interesting because
um,
I find myself in that stage, reflecting of what I've done in the past and what I look forward to in the future. Who's that?
That's actually a really good point. Like how often actually do we think about the present, right? Like how do we it speaks again, it speaks to the fact that like why I want to reduce my time on social media is because I am sometimes not living in the present. I'm attached to either the past or the future based on my social media usage. But I really want to focus on the now, and I think that's where this, like the conversation like this is is a great way to use technology because we are focused on this conversation on the now versus being attached to any other outcome, and I think that's great. I think also taking a step back and saying maybe you want to be a bit more intentional and you know create content that helps others be more grounded. I think is a good way to perhaps lead life. And I guess maybe that's why, I don't know, I feel like that's why we have a lot of great pharmacists out there. I know Jessica Louis, for example, is the host of the Burnout Doctor, right? So she's helping folks be more grounded, more mindful, I think, and more intentional, I think, in life and career. So I think there's a need for detaching yourself from social media, and maybe being more intentional in life. I think that's a really good point, Brian. That you
And it's almost like a double-edged sword in some ways, because it's like, so going back to your idea of like saying no, there are many times I've talked to other friends who, let's say in this space, in pharmacy or in informatics or whatever career, and a lot of people reach out to help once they see that you're doing good things, and they're like, hey, how can I do what you're doing? And they reach out for help. And then as you become more quote unquote successful, you're going to have more people asking you. And then it's, for me, I find it tough to say no when someone asks for help. Like, hey, I really want to, let's say, get into pharmacy school or get into residency or get into informatics.
right,
Um, it hurts to say no. But at the same time, you can't help the hundreds or thousands of people that ask you, right? So here's where social media is a double edged sword. I find that, one, I do want to decrease my usage. Um, but on the other hand, it's a way to scale your advice. So if
right,
someone asks the question of how do I get into pharmacy informatics, you can create a video or make a post, and then tons of people sees it. Tons of people could benefit. So I feel as though that might be an easier thing to say yes to than one individual person. So it's like pros and cons of using social media.
yeah, that's a good point. Actually, it's funny because I I think it was earlier last year, I was submitting speaking topics to, I think this was actually Epic UGM, and some conferences for our field. And so where you may be able to present and maybe give value to, let's say, 200, 300 people, right, in a enclosed room. um, that's somewhat valuable, and maybe it's even fewer than that. But what was interesting was that my submission kind of didn't make it all the way through. Let's put it that way. And I initially I was a little bit disappointed, but what I realized was that really doesn't matter. We have these platforms out there on LinkedIn, on Instagram, whatever, that are largely free, and you can provide value to others. And what was interesting was I gave the same sort of topic I think through LinkedIn. I got over maybe 5,000 views. Uh, I mean, who knows if they were actual, legitimate views, but it's just funny that you can get your message out there and help others using the platform. So you're right, technology has its uses, but I also think that yeah, we have to also be intentional within ourselves. I think to make sure we're aligned with whatever goals we have, and whatever kind of mission we have, we should sort of stay true to. Because you can only do, like you said, you can only do a certain amount within a
Mhm.
finite amount of time. And I think that's a battle I always have. Like I have that on a daily sometimes, I'm always rethinking my steps because it is hard to discern, what step you should take next. I think what's helped me is like having a support system, whether it's you guys, it's some of the folks on the Pharmacies Connect, um, to give that continuous feedback, to allow you to grow in a way that's fit for you, right? That's probably a good way to look at it. So, Brian, you having this YouTube channel, I think it's great because it allows you to also help others in that sense. I would sense.
And it's I feel like this is a very cliche thing to say coming from someone who creates YouTube videos like myself, but um, before I say the next thing, I'm just gonna acknowledge. Looks like we have a comment from Just Me. What's your name, by the way, Just Me, and appreciate
Okay.
the comments there. And if you have any New Year's resolutions, please post your comments and thoughts. Love to hear what other people have in store for a new decade and a new year. But so for YouTube, it's fascinating because like going back to our conversation of what is our end goal and building these habits and trying to find ways to scale it is I started actually being serious, kind of serious with YouTube in the fall of 2016, and part of it was because I was like, why can we not get pharmacy informatics content out there? Why is there so much red tape? Why is it so hard to get this? So I was like, hey, you know what? Why don't I just put it on YouTube? And I think this is what all YouTubers say is if you want to get into YouTube, do it for the right reasons.
Uh,
And for me, it wasn't about getting views or getting subscribers or getting famous or anything like that. It was finding a way to take the what I had in my mind and the experiences that I had, documenting it and sharing it with the world. And if you look through some of my old videos, and I somewhat cringe sometimes when I look through it, is I was so excited when I got like 25 subscribers. I was like, who are these people? And it was so fascinating to think back to those times, and I was just so happy that I'm like, maybe my message is resonating with people. It's like people actually find value in some of the content I'm sharing. um, and that's what I feel as though is my current life goal, is trying to find ways to scale content of any kind, knowledge of any kind through social media, but doing it in a way that's meaningful. So sharing your own personal stories or sharing someone else's stories, like what we're doing right now, just having conversations about what motivates us and what some of our goals are. Um, yeah.
yeah, it's definitely all about perspective, right? Like, so what your perspective may change, of course, during the lifetime of your career, or journey, but also, someone else's perspective may also provide value in a different way, and so having more perspectives and being more diverse about that, I think, genuinely helpful to the community. And so I'm looking forward to doing more of this, with you and Tony and David. Um, so I
Can,
think, all right, yeah, it's
yeah, I might do more of these, and I definitely think that um, what was it? I just had a brain fart.
okay.
I plan to live stream some of the Q&As. So I struggle so much to
Yeah,
answer emails and comments, and part of the reason is because people like write me essays. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't respond to this. This is a lot of questions you guys got, and it's so hard to keep up. But part of it is I'm very interested in doing like maybe weekly live streams on the channel, or and having
yeah.
guests like yourself jump on it, and we can read through some of the questions and just help help people in more real time because I have a hard time just messaging people back and forth.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, and I think a lot of the answers are, "Hey, Jasmine." By the way, just me is Jasmine. So
Oh,
awesome. Awesome. I guess, Jasmine. I guess question for you is, what is your kind of goal or outcome in? I'm kind of assuming, Brian, your viewers are like pharmacy related. So yeah, I'm just kind of curious, like who your audience is in general, and
yeah, that's a good question. I have no idea who makes up my audience. Like, so right now I have like 2,700 or so subs, and I'm like, there's, I actually don't think well, I'm pretty sure not all of them are pharmacy perspectives, or have an interest in pharmacy, but the vast majority probably are. And I'm curious. But so YouTube does have analytics, and I think this would be the first time I'm showing my analytics publicly, so I can do that. I have some insight, but not a lot. Let me
that'd be fun. Yeah.
see. I will show what the insight is. Here we go. I'm gonna pull this over to YouTube and let's see what people watch this channel. Do you see it on YouTube?
Should be coming up soon.
Let me actually change it to the last 365 days.
I'm kind of curious when LinkedIn Live is going to happen for us here, Brian.
It's it's
That's the next level.
yeah, I haven't piloted LinkedIn Live. I feel as though I'm more interested in YouTube at this time. It would be nice if they had some type of integration.
Right.
Well, I'll just go ahead and start chatting here. So it looks like in the last 365 days, um, most people are not subscribed. So if you aren't subscribed, definitely subscribe. But the majority of my demographics looks like are female. 54% of the viewers in the last 365 days were female. 49 were male. What does this show? View gender.
Oh, cool. So you have countries as well?
Yeah. So geography looks like the majority are from the United States, followed by Canada. Why is India listed over here? Oh, it must be number of. Is this number of people? I don't know what this is. What's 55 represent? Oh, that's views. So 5,500 views came from India, but can't United States and Canada. So what this shows is that people in India are watching my content less.
Okay.
But there's more watch time in the United States, Canada, India, UK. Looks like Philippines is afterwards. Age is always interesting, but not surprising. 63% are in that. Looks like they're in the pharmacy, about to graduate age towards fresh grad, 25 to 34. 25%, so a quarter of my viewers are in the college and probably pharmacy school. Actually, this is kind of surprising. So a lot of people in pharmacy school don't watch it then, and in comparison to the entire viewer count. So most of them are probably graduated from pharmacy school, in residency, or post residency. Those are the majority of my viewers, and then there's a handful that are further out in their career.
Wow.
So that is age. Is there other ones? These are always interesting. Like, how do people find the channel?
Great.
YouTube search, but there's not that much. You want to see some other interesting things, like what's the most interesting content. The highest, most watched by watch time hours is my 2 nursing informatics videos.
That's pretty amazing. Wow.
By watch time, but by hours, it's a video that I created a long time ago about how to use smart pumps. So by views, that's insane. 26,000 views on this video. Then Epic training, then nursing informatics, Epic training, nursing informatics. Those are by views. Um,
Wow. The Google Analytics tool is pretty robust, I would say.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool to see what. Oh, there's a lot of comments.
Hey, Jasmine. Oh,
Cool.
thanks for appreciating pharmacists, by the way. That's pretty pretty awesome.
Oh, are you not? Is Jasmine not a pharmacist?
I definitely agree with her goals with mindfulness and reading more. And yoga is something I actually need to start getting more into, by the way. So
Oh, yeah, she's not in the pharmacy industry. That's interesting. So why do you watch this channel? I'm just very curious. Like, what is it? Oh, you just subscribed though. Okay, I got that. So Jasmine was maybe a follower of you, and then she came onto the live chat. Yeah, mindfulness is good. Meditation. I would love to start meditation, and just being reflective and having time to think. Yoga is probably not my thing. I'm not really good at yoga.
well, I guess it depends on what yoga you're speaking of, because I know there's the practice of pranayam, which is the breathing yoga,
Hmm.
and that's actually uh, probably one I'm kind of more in tune to because it's a bit slower pace. It's not like really m- big, large movements. It's more on the breath, and that kind of is closer to meditation in my mind.
Is that the thing that Matt Diavella did recently? Did you see that?
You know what? I didn't know actually. Let me approach
It's
it
I don't know
up.
how I feel about it because I was thinking from the medical side. So it looks like the type of I wish I knew what it was called. Maybe Jasmine will have some more insight into this as well, because it looked like I'll describe it first. It's very rapid breathing, and you kind of reflect. And the rapid breathing, from a medical perspective, I was wondering, is it like the blood is not getting to your head, and it seems as though there's some time and experience of euphoria where you just go into this different state. And I feel as though it's because you're breathing rapidly, the oxygen is not getting to your brain, so you experience this strange sensation. And for a lot of people, it manifests in a very emotional response. So if you watch Matt's
Oh,
video,
okay.
he ends up completely breaking down as he's thinking about all these different things. He's meditating, and one of the things he thinks about is his wife, and it just makes him completely tear up. And he's on video, and he captures this whole experience. And his sister is the teacher, and he talks about how it's very common to get a emotional response from doing this. But I was like, I wonder if it's yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about the medical side. I was like, is it because there's not enough oxygen going to your brain, so you experience this?
It's like a physiological response, I guess.
Yeah,
It's
because
pretty.
they were specifically saying like, don't do this when you're driving. Don't breathe work. That's what
Yeah.
it's called.
Well, I just posted a link to an article. Actually, this is a researcher at my medical center. Um, he actually doing some really great research on uh, pranayama yoga, which I think may be the same.
How do you
But
spell that?
so pranayama is prana, so Prana, and then yama, Yama. And he's done some great research around this, which is like, this
Oh,
breathing stimulates this type of nerve growth factor that's found in your saliva, and that is supposed to promote, I guess, more reduction in toxins in your body and reduce inflammation and all these positive outcomes. So he's taken basically what is Indian ancient scripts of the Indian civilization. He's translated that into scientific knowledge through research, and he's still working on that right now with our
Bikram.
yeah. This is I mean, I think there's a lot of science that we have not discovered yet around this. Um, So check it out. But yeah,
Bikram yoga. Oh, interesting. Yeah, well, Jasmine's definitely the expert here. This is not my territory. She has a lot of comments.
I'm kind of curious about Bikram too because I feel like there was a Netflix show about Bikram, by the way, which was kind of very controversial. But the
That's the
actual
hot yoga. Is that?
yeah, the hot yoga piece, I think that would be really kind of cool to explore.
Huh. Yeah, I maybe that could be a goal of mine in 2020. I don't know. I'll have to give it a try. I've only done yoga. This might be surprising. Once in my life.
Wow.
Um, it
I feel
was
like we need a video. We need a video.
there's no there's pictures. I have pictures. I don't have a video, but no, it's great. I mean, everyone that I hear that talks about yoga is it seems as though the benefits are clear and a lot of strong supporters of yoga. I don't think I've just had the time to explore the
Well,
intricacies of it or learn more about it.
and I guess like there's a tie into meditation, regardless of like if you're doing yoga or if you're I think Brian, you've done a bit of running in the past, right? I've certainly done some running and it's got me to that sort of meditative state. So creating those habits, I think, yeah, definitely like why aren't we building positive habits for our health more? I think that's the question.
Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of going back to like some of the concrete habits. So going for thinking about like health and fitness. Um, I just moved to DC a month and a half ago, and so I haven't been able to really get back into some of my running habits. But I used to run 2 to 3 miles every other day
Huh.
to make sure I have good heart health because I have high cholesterol. I love my sweets. So I gotta make sure I stay on that. But that habit has not come back, unfortunately,
Yeah.
since I moved. Just haven't found a good schedule or running path or anything like that. I've just been too busy. But I have started meal prepping.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So that has been pretty good with a cheat meal, 1 to 2 cheat meals a week. But I have a pretty strict meal prep diet where I'll just meal prep once a week, chicken and broccoli, um, fruits, lots of veggies, drink primarily just water, and that has made me feel good for myself.
I'm kind of curious about those box of chocolates behind you there, but
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you shouldn't have. Not supposed to call that out publicly. Yeah, I got a. I think it's a box of like 32 truffles, really nice
oh,
chocolate truffles, and over the last 2 days, I probably ate like 20 of them. Um, Jasmine has a lot of comments.
that's awesome.
It's good. No, we like the comments. It's always good to very very interesting too to engage with non-pharmacy individuals. I think I would have expected a lot of people from pharmacy to come over. New hypes for breath work. It's so fascinating. There's so many things that I just have no idea about, and
Yeah. There's a lot of like non-traditional, I guess, medicine that's coming, emerging in the US at least. So I feel like as pharmacists, we get trained in very traditional like medicine approaches. So, you know, maybe some lifestyle modifications like changes in exercise regimens and non-pharmaceutical recommendations should be more of our, I guess, more of our recommendations and more of our practice as we move along. That's it's a good point, Jasmine. I feel like um, yoga is a good one to maybe, how often do we have a conversation with a pharmacist, and they're recommending yoga
hmm,
or meditation, to reduce stress. But we all know stress is actually more of a concern now than it ever was. And I think I think there's a lot to be said with
you
protection.
and you wonder why that is, and I keep referring back to Matt Diavella because the
Right.
conversations, and I hope one day these kind of conversations will get to that level where it's truly, and maybe it is kind of right now. We're having these deep conversations that touch on some of our values and why we do certain things. In one of his um, podcasts that he talks about, he interviews a guest. I think it's actually the video that you sent me, the very first video, and he talks about coming over from the UK very early on. I think maybe it was the 1980s, and he said, "When I first got to America, it's America. It's the land of dreams." And he would ask any random American here and says, "How is life?" And people would say, "It's America. It's great. I feel great. I can live my dreams. There's so many freedoms here. It's amazing." And then he switches the question, and he says, nowadays that answer is a little different. Now when you ask someone from America, "Hey, how are you doing? How is everything?" Everyone says good, but busy. And
Oh,
he makes the observation that for whatever reason nowadays America, it's become this era of hustle and stress and busy. It's why
right,
is that? Like what has changed between
right.
now and then, and why are we so busy? Like why is that mindset prevalent?
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. So that's a typical response I get, or I actually give that response in some cases to others. As like, and especially family that I have, which I've got family all across the world. So like from India to East Africa to Australia. There's folks in those countries, and even Europe. Like there's folks in those countries that are, I think, less concerned, maybe marginally less concerned in some cases than us in the US. But I often think like, why am I sort of messaging out the fact that I'm always busy or there's always a hustle, happening, and they're always like, oh, we're just like kind of like we're just going through life, we're living life, and you know being being fulfilled, and I'm sort of stressing to them, well, you guys kind of have to take it up a notch, you have to do this or do that, and then sort of reflect back on that, and I'm like, well, why? Like it goes back to that sort of philosophy of like, are you living to work or working to live, right?
Hmm.
And I think in the US, we often get trapped in that sort of perspective of, maybe we're living to work a bit more. Um, but maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the Europeans have it figured out more so than us. So yeah, it's a good point of reflection, I guess.
Yeah.
But it goes back to like, make sure you have, you know, habits that feed into the three or four whatever domains you want out of life, and I think that may be a good way out of that sort of trap, so to speak. um
Yeah, there's so many thoughts on my mind on where this conversation could go, and I don't know what the best way is to articulate it. For example, one thought that I have is it's oh, this is hard to say. It's okay to work hard if it's okay to work hard if it aligns with the greater purpose that you have in life and it makes you happy. And to give you an example of this, the most recent project I took on, I knew it was going to be hard work. And when I reflect back on the hours I spent, it was well over 100 hours a week for long, long periods of time. And I remember there were multiple times when I'm working late at night and I was so excited and I was feeling energetic because the work that I was doing aligned with my greater purpose. And I
yeah.
felt very good about that. And in those cases, and I'm reading a lot about burnout literature right now, so trying to figure out how to stay motivated and engaged with work.
Mhm.
And I reflect back and I'm like, I was probably doing okay because it made me happy. It felt like it was fulfilling my purpose. And in that case, I was busy, but I was doing good work that I really liked. So thinking back to America, why everyone is like, everyone wants to get out of the 9 to 5. Everyone wants to make money and everyone wants I don't know. Maybe that's how America defines success. You get a 9 to 5 job, you work in some corporate place, but it doesn't align with their purpose, and then they get burned out.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. And well, and maybe in some cases it doesn't align with their purpose because you haven't taken those steps to make sure it's aligned with your purpose. So whether that means like you going back and taking an extra course, right, or a master's program, and finding like reskilling, upskilling your skill sets to find the role you want that aligns with your goal, or you take a pay cut and you work in a job that may eventually lead into that alignment, or you pivot to a different career. And you're right though. Like I think in America, like what do they say? There's a large majority of folks who hate their work.
Yeah, a lot. I feel as though a lot of people don't like what they're doing.
Which and so you're first of all you're working in 9 to 5. You're trying to hustle so you can make that successful career or that successful trajectory of yours work in your favor, and then you hate your job. And it's like then you suffer burnout and try and figure out how to recover from that so that you can keep going on. It's like why are we so like I feel grateful that I don't think we have that dilemma, but it's like a majority of Americans, from what I read, that's fairly pretty much the case, right? Um, and I think, well, and just to kind of add to that real quick, I think the other part that we're missing is as Americans, as going through college, especially, we're not trained on how you become financially savvy, right?
Mm,
So I think that feeds a lot into that because if people are stuck at a workplace they do not like or a job they don't like, you are truly stuck if you don't have that financial buffer to change, right? So having that, like that's part of my goal is like making sure you're financially independent because you can truly do what you want to do. It doesn't have to be retirement. It can be anything. It could be like starting a company. It could be starting another job somewhere else, trying to reskill, upskill yourself. So I feel like if people have some skill sets, some baseline skill sets when they're getting out of college, with finance and with maybe with a roadmap for their careers um, that they can leverage, I think that ultimately the U.S. will be a better place for corporate work.
so uh, that whole idea is so interesting to me, and why I resonate so much with the whole concept of universal basic income. Like, I would be very curious to see how the whole workforce shifts in every single industry, not only in the US, but around the world, as
Yeah,
we tackle on more automation technology, like artificial intelligence. Like, a lot of predictions, you read some of about the things, and people are saying that in the future, many of our both white collar and blue collar jobs will be
mhm,
automated. And
mhm,
so, where does humans fit in? Humans, as opposed to any type of robots or automation, have creativeness. We have art. We have emotion. So, what does the future workforce look like in
mhm.
that era? Um, and so, universal basic income becomes very interesting because you can. The idea would be to support someone in doing what they love, and potentially creative or artsy, emotional, support them through universal basic income, and they can, that's like a supplement to whatever job they're doing in the future. So it's like they can do
Yeah,
that right now, because a lot of people are probably pursuing that nine
right,
to five in a corporate job or in some fancy job because they need to
right,
for finance reasons.
right.
But then as it shifts, I wonder what that will look like in the future.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Like, will that elevate your role in society and bring further like increase your value in society, or maybe it'll just create mediocrity and then we'll all be like failing. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but I feel like that's a really interesting thought experiment for sure. Um, I know that the rise in technology and automation is coming, and it's certainly coming to healthcare, right? It's certainly coming to our world in pharmacy, and I feel like that's probably why we have to probably prepare for it. Like it may be something we can plan for, but not fully anticipate. So you're right. I think that's going to be an interesting decade ahead of us.
It will be interesting. Yeah, I think actually I don't know what I think. I hear Andrew Yang talk about a lot of it, and do you keep up with politics right now? Are you watching the debates?
No, I haven't been seeing the debates lately, but yeah, I've been following Yang for a bit.
Okay.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I feel as though whoever gets elected, whether it's Republican or Democratic, they're probably going to tap into some of Yang's insight into how to tackle the automation um, thing that's coming. If I mean,
Yeah,
it's here in many places already,
yeah.
and that's what he talks about in terms of automating a lot of this stuff.
Mhm.
But even before him, Zuckerberg was talking about this back in the commencement speech a while ago.
Mhm.
Um, but anyways, let's talk about something less. I mean, I
Yeah,
enjoy this topic too. I love this topic. I'm curious. Actually, I would love to have more of these kind of conversations because I feel as though it's so fascinating to get other people's opinions on this. But let's talk about something fun. And maybe this won't be fun, but 2020 goals. What are some of the things that's changed between 2019 and 2020, and what are the things you're hoping to accomplish?
yeah. It's a good question. Yeah. So I guess the main thing
Do you have
for
one? Let's pick one. Is there one main thing that you would love to do in 2020 versus 2019?
okay. Yeah. So 2019 was it was a pretty interesting time for me personally. I exited a team
Mm-hmm.
at my work. So I was part of an innovation team with the medical center, and it was a really awesome experience. Um, I exited that, and I started leaning into more pharmacy and more, I guess, how do we build a innovative model of with other like-minded pharmacists in pharmacy to help with some of this incoming disruption and change in our world. So one of the lessons I learned from that was finding the right team, right, and finding one that you can help support for a mission that's higher than yourself, and like it provides impact socially to our world. So I think for me, it's been uh, it's been more of how can I help our pharmacy profession more, and how best to do that in my world as a pharmacy informaticist. So I think for 2020, I'm looking forward to working with you, Brian, and David Vu and Tony Dow on our Pharmacy Informatics Academy. I think we have a lot to give as far as life experiences, as far as career development goals. And I feel like mentorship and education have always been my true priority in life to give back what I've gained from so many others in our community. And I feel like that's probably rings well with all four of us. So I think this is the time and space to really challenge the status quo, bring about true change for an impact for our profession, and also then hopefully that will translate to change for our entire communities that we serve, right? So as a pharmacist, I know we're a big part of the DNA of each and every community out there. And so if we can help our profession use technology and leverage it for healthcare, I have a strong feeling that that will ultimately have a trickle down effect to helping healthcare um, in society. So that's my hope and dream is to work with some amazing folks on the academy and start kind of gearing up our new generation of clinicians to be better advocates for healthcare and technology. So
So
that's kind of in a
2020.
nutshell.
That's kind of the big thing for 2020 then.
I think so. I think
Hmm.
yeah, that's part of the focus. And then of course be creative, continue that creative journey of um, you know, being a curious individual, exploring the world. So I have a lot of travel basically planned for this year. I've got a lot of um, yeah, just a lot of exploring to do, I think, as well. So um, how about yourself, Brian?
Hmm.
You've got so many things in your plate. I'm just like literally thinking of what is he gonna talk about next. I'm like,
I think 2019 is so interesting. So like
mhm,
2019 was like one of the biggest changes for me. I mean, as you know, I moved from Minnesota to DC. I have
yeah,
no idea what I expected in the beginning of 2019, but I can tell you like in the very beginning of 2019 was when I first took my very first policy class. You
mhm,
know, how do you impact change at the policy level? I hate politics. I've never been into politics, and I took it, and I remember falling asleep majority of the class. It was about rulemaking and how do you go lobby politicians and things like that. I was like, this is boring,
mhm,
um, and that was it. But then I have to do this internship to graduate from my master's, and I was like reaching out to so many different programs. I was like, hey, can I do an internship here? Hey, can I do an internship here? And ultimately, I had two places that got back to me, and one was the ONC, which is the Office of National Coordinator, and the other was CMS, both for federal agencies. And I was like, huh, ONC is very interesting. So they're in charge of the legislation around health information technology in the US. And I was like, okay, it could be, it looks nice. It probably would be good on my resume. I'll knock that out. And I went there, signed up. It was like a 6 month process to do an internship for a month. And then I was going to head to LA and pursue my dream of what we just talked about earlier, which was to scale social media, to train people, and to help people. That was my dream, is to go to LA and learn how to scale my YouTube.
mhm, mhm,
And then everything changed because I went and I did this internship, and I was like, this is fascinating. You can do so much to help so many people through policy. But what I also realized, you know, working from the political side on the federal side is it's not just policy. You need people on both sides. You need people like we're in healthcare, so we need um, we're talking about how to influence healthcare. You need people in academia. You need people in policy. You need people in tech that's disrupting everything. We need to collaborate all together.
yeah,
But it fundamentally changed everything on my mind for 2019, and I was like, policy has to be one of the pillars or domains that I focus on, and so now policy has become something new for me. And so in terms of now 2020, I don't really know. And one of my friends recently asked me about what my goals were, and I was like, I really don't know. I don't know what my New Year's resolutions are. All I know is that I'm going to graduate from my master's program after 2.5 years in May,
mhm, mhm,
and I honestly don't know what the next steps are. And it's something I want to do a video on because it's like we pretty much have a lot of our life scripted. You know,
mhm,
if you're in America, you think through, you go to elementary school, that's something that most people would do, then middle school, then high school, then everyone pushes you to do college, then maybe graduate school. And if you're in healthcare like us, sometimes it's going to postgraduate opportunities like residencies or fellowships. And then some of us pursue
right,
masters or certifications.
mhm,
So that's your life is kind of scripted in a sense.
mhm, yeah,
But for me, now that that part is ending, I'm done with a lot of those things, and my master's will be ending. I honestly don't know what to do or spend my time on after that.
That's
Um,
actually, yeah, it's kind of interesting because you have this unknown factor where actually that could be the biggest opportunity, right? Like you have
it's
this.
scary. I, I mean, yeah, there's so many
Oh,
things that I want to work on and things, but it becomes an idea of like there's so many choices
yeah,
and so many things I could focus on. I'm not entirely sure what to focus on, but I think it should be informed by what are, like what you were saying before, that goal that is really far out.
right,
But how do you
right,
do that also in light of the time you want to spend with family and friends?
right. That's the $100 million question. That it's funny because I think we share, like, even though we don't say it, probably we share the same dilemma. Most likely 9 out of 10 folks will probably think that, right, at some point. And maybe it's this maybe this is the new era. Like this is going back to why do we have a little stress in this world? Decision fatigue is also a real thing.
Yeah.
When you talk about clinical decision fatigue in our electronic health record systems, but um, what about life, right? Like ultimately, we have so many decisions. We have so many choices in life, and not that we're not grateful for that. Like it's a huge privilege, but at the same time, it's maybe that's why we have a lot of stress.
So so with
Yeah.
that, one of the things I intentionally do is try to decrease those decisions. And
Mm,
it's something that I thought about from an article talked about it a long time ago on Obama and Mark
okay.
Zuckerberg. One of the things that they have in common is that their wardrobe has the same things in it. I don't remember if it was like Obama always having the same white shirt or Mark Zuckerberg always had the same black shirt or a t shirt. I do the exact same thing. So over the last
Cool.
probably 2 years, I've started to replace my wardrobe with either the same exact socks, the
Yeah.
same exact work shirt, the same exact t shirt, um, to take the decision of choosing wardrobes on a day to day basis because that takes effort. So I want to reduce the mental effort I have as much as possible so I can just be efficient and focus on other things that
Mm.
need my attention.
Yeah, I actually that's a really good way to put it.
The
May have to.
critique is you can be boring, which a lot of people might say that it, I could be a little boring in that sense because
Yeah.
everything's the same.
Well, maybe that's that's where depends where your focus is, right? Like, are you focused on having a great wardrobe and exciting, or are you focused more on other activities? But yeah, I think focus is where I'm also kind of working on as well. So may have to take your idea of like the wardrobe, by the way. That's kind of
You don't do
cool.
that?
I don't, I, you know what? I focus on, I would say I focus on frugal
Hmm.
purchasing. So I would probably, like to your point with socks, I would probably buy a batch of like 2 dozen socks, right? Every 1 or 2 years. And now that would be my frugal way of buying my wardrobe. So like or maybe two pants every 2 years or something like that. And that way I can be very efficient with my time, right? In purchasing socks, for example. And then I batch it and buy if they start to wear out, I buy it in another 2 years. But that helps me be efficient, but it also helps me save money because I buy like super awesome deals as well. So for me, it is about efficiency, but it's also about making sure that I'm being cognizant of my finances.
Hmm.
And I feel like that ultimately then achieves my goal of saving more, investing better, and ultimately having financial independence. early on in life.
That
So I can do the things I want to do, right? That's kind of
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting topic that I love to talk about with people too, because it's so vastly different, and it's about it's about financial management. And so your example of spending less on certain things like perhaps socks.
mhm.
Me too. I actually don't spend a lot of money on wardrobe, as you can see, and many of my friends can see. I don't spend a lot on wardrobe. I don't put much effort, but I would spend money, as you know, like you see that camera back there that I just invested
Thank
in,
you, man. Yeah.
right? But everyone has something that they love that they would invest their money in. Like a car, I would not invest in a car. I would not invest in a crazy piece of house. I wouldn't invest in a real estate. I wouldn't invest in certain things, but other people do because those things matter to them. Like I would invest in travel because that is meaningful to me. But I'll be frugal in those other areas. Like some people would travel first class on flights. That's not important to me because the destination is more important. The experiences there are more important
Right.
versus the flight. So instead of taking like a $1,500 flight, I'll take like $100 flight. But that's important to some people, and I think it's a fascinating conversation to have on what are what are those important things to people and what do they value.
Yeah. I think you hit it on the nail. Like, find out what you value, what's important to you, and then kind of curate your life based around that. And I think the same is true with careers, right? So, like, what's valuable to you in your career that you really enjoy, and then take away everything that you don't really enjoy, and what are you left with? And then how do you build a career roadmap around that? To me, I feel like that is an increasing need. Like that's where a lot of people just fall like into that trap of I'm just going to get into this job because this sounds like the one I should be getting into, right? This is like maybe pharmacy informatics is not where you really need to be. Maybe that's just something that's cool, shiny, flashy right now, but maybe it's something completely different. But until you take inventory of what you truly enjoy and what brings you value, I think you won't get a good start. I mean, you may be better off just kind of either getting a mentor, getting um, a good roadmap, develop a roadmap for yourself, or find resources that allow you to kind of discern those values that you want. But again, it's like, in our field, Brian, and you know this, right? Like our pharmacy profession has, at least in the US, like we just have so much more competition for jobs these days. Like I think that's feeding into this problem of like I have to just get a job and then I'll figure out the rest later.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just where I feel like we're going a little bit sideways. So
The, so on that note, it just made me think of about something, especially like pharmacy informatics and like it's the shiny thing, or just let's just talk about informatics in general, or data science or artificial intelligence, all buzzwords, and everyone is super excited about it, and everyone wants to get into it, and it's like, is that really for you? Have you heard of the Johari window?
I have not, no.
It was something my mom shared with me when I was a kid, and I just looked it up because I always remember just one of the windows because I can't remember the other ones. But basically, there's four windows to your life, and one of them is about the way she described it in the past was there's a window of things that you are amazingly talented at, or
Hmm.
made or something that makes you super happy,
Yeah.
and you may or may not find it in life, but if you do, it's amazing. And I think one of the examples she shared with me when I was a kid was some people don't start painting until they're 60 or 70, and for whatever reason they become like the next Michelangelo. They're amazing. They're like, wow, I didn't know I had this talent.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and I don't know why it made me think about that, but it the other example that I was thinking about was when you talked about if everyone should be getting into pharmacy informatics. So on the public side, so it goes back to the window. Everyone is seeing like me and you or other people that's talking about pharmacy informatics. It's an amazing job. It's super flexible. We can work from home. We can work remote. We can do all these cool things. It's like it's nice, right?
Right.
But I also have the things that other people don't see, like the stresses where informatics pharmacy is a 24/7 thing in some ways. Our projects don't end. We don't have sometimes days where we say our day ends at this time. We might get calls late at night or things like that. But here's the other thing that's more concrete, and I wanted to talk about in the past is I had someone watch a lot of my videos and was like, hey, I love it. I love pharmacy informatics. They actually took a lot of my advice. They got into pharmacy informatics. 1 or 2 months in, they hated it.
Really?
And this is not uncommon. Yeah, there's a couple people that have told me this, and they're like, everything you've talked about in pharmacy informatics was not what I experienced.
Right.
And in some ways, it hurts me because I'm like, oh man, did I lead someone down the wrong path? And that's so scary to me. But something that I would love to do more of is talk about some of the negative things that we have experienced in informatics, or just be more transparent. That's one.
Right.
Be transparent in what we communicate. And the second thing is bring on different perspectives and people who we disagree with so we can share the different perspectives with the people out there. But yeah, I just think it's interesting. Like pharmacy informatics is huge, data science is huge, artificial intelligence is huge, and it's like we push people toward that way. But is that the way? Is that going to make that person happy? And I think that's a fascinating area to explore too.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check out this Johari window concept. It's really interesting, especially this the blind areas.
Yeah,
Kind of concept. I like the quadrant diagram here. So yeah, and to your point, we probably should like open up dialogue on the negatives of our careers as well. You know, I mean, there's you only see the good stuff. Sometimes it's like you got to know what the downsides are. Like I was at ASHP mid-year with you, Brian, 2 years ago, and I was in one of the roundtable talks. I think it was for pharmacy informatics, where they had just a bunch of our colleagues discussing, burnout, and someone raised the questions. They said, how many of you have experienced burnout before in your informatics careers? And I think it was probably about 80, maybe 90% of folks raised their hands. And to me, that was kind of almost reassuring because I feel like,
that so many people are burned out.
I mean, reassuring like in terms of not like I loved it, I kind of almost like validated my feelings, right? Like it was like, I've been so stressed in my job sometimes that, I've not really, it hasn't really excited me. Like it's, I've gone through burnout as well, or I may have gone through burnout as well. But I've also found it, that you can easily get to that point because first of all, it's a pharmacist position and it's also IT position. And so now if you're intersecting technology with critical, acute care settings, if you get a page, you're gonna have to address that pretty quickly. In some cases, it can affect patients very adversely, right? Like, so this is critical, like factor to our roles that sometimes people just don't get, and some of our users don't get. Like they're like, oh, you can fix this problem. It's like gonna be magic. Like, no, like most cases, it takes a lot of critical thinking, a lot of problem solving, and a lot of stress behind that to figure out. So, yeah, the fact that I was in this like roundtable talk with folks, and they were also saying, it's been a stressful, harrowing journey for them. It was very like almost like liberating. It was like making me think, that this was this is a career that's probably not fit for everyone for sure, but it's also we haven't expressed that as pharmacy informatics content creators. We haven't expressed how what are the downsides. So I agree. We should probably make that more transparent.
Yeah, and what's difficult too with doing something like that is, um, the job responsibilities in our field right now are so different across our field. What I do is probably very different than what you do, but yet we're both informatics pharmacists.
Yeah,
And the downsides that I have is potentially different than what you have. And so that's why I think it's so important to bring in different people to talk about, both the good and bad and what they do. But did you realize that we've been streaming for an hour and 42 minutes?
yeah, it's a quite a long time. I like the last comment, by the way.
Huh?
Thank you. No time for travel, time travel, catharsis. Yeah, I feel like I'm having a lot of cathartic thoughts here. So
Yeah, it's an engaging chat though, right? It's
yeah, it's definitely bang on comment there. So
Yeah. So maybe we can start wrapping it up. And I'm curious. This is a very strange question to ask, but maybe we can wrap up on this note. And thinking about it now is, I don't even know if I have an answer to this, but um, let's say you had. I don't mean to be, dark, being that it's a new year and everything. But
right, right.
if you knew you had a year to live, what would you do?
Ooh, man, that's hard. That
What's
is
the first thing that comes to mind?
hard. Wow. I would pack up all my bags and I would travel like crazy.
Really?
I would love to just travel.
Why? Tell me one or two locations you would travel to, and why you would pick travel.
I think just travel because there is just so much in this world that I have not seen. And like to think about, the amount of time that you showed earlier with how much finite time you actually have available. Um, the experiences we've had, like it's very, very small, very narrow, and like I think the beauty of this world is just like truly just getting out there, learning about different cultures, and I think for me it would be connecting with other folks and learning about their culture and how they live. I think is pretty the most important thing to me. And I've always been a traveler since I was a kid. As an immigrant coming to the U.S., it's always been travel has always been the most exciting journey for me. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's probably where I would start. But again, it goes back to you need to have financial independence or at least a buffer to do that, right? You probably need money to do that as well. So
But if
if
that was if you really did have, let's say, a year to live, I mean, I would imagine in that case you would sell everything and just go on a trip.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that's so how I guess that's where you have to position yourself to be in a. So if it's a theoretical question of like, what would you do if you had unlimited resources? That's definitely what I would do.
Let me change the question real quick,
Okay.
where that does not become even a factor. If you found out that you only had a day to live, what would you do right now? Let's say
Oh,
right after this call, I just told you that you only had a day to live. What would you do right
well,
after
I
the
would
call?
say you're like a terrible pharmacist. But
Okay, okay. Then what would you do next?
all right. So I would probably pack up my stuff and I would travel to where my family is. I would spend most of my time with them, and if I could, I would take them with me and travel somewhere so I could spend most of my time with them. Um, I think that's a pretty boring answer, but I think maybe again, maybe boring is there's a lot to be said with. being simple about it. I guess I don't know. You threw a kind of curveball.
Well,
I
yeah, that
think
was the point. I mean, it's like what
yeah,
comes to mind first, and I'll give you the context on why I'm asking the question. The
okay,
question comes because we have so many things to do in life, and we talked about this at first, where we're all so busy with all these projects, but we should make sure we prioritize the things that's most important to us. And when you ask a question about what would you do if, not say a year, like tomorrow,
yeah,
if you died, if you only had a day to live, what would you do tomorrow? You would completely shut out and say no to so many different things
right,
and only pick the things that you care about most. Um, and it's hard because I don't know how to do that. So I think about this quite often.
yeah,
And it's like if you ask me the same question about what would I do if I only had a day to live, it would be to find a way to express how I feel about the relationships I have in my life. And I think this is a cultural thing where in maybe most Asian culture,
yeah,
definitely Chinese culture, but or maybe it's Chinese American culture. I don't know, but the Chinese culture is that a lot of us are very emotionless,
hmm,
and as some of my ex girlfriends would describe, cold. I could be described as cold at times, and it's difficult to express emotion. And as humans, we are emotional creatures,
uh,
and I think I have not in my life been able to fully express how I feel honestly with certain relationships in my life. So I think part of that would be trying to figure out a way in the next day, if I only had a day to live, to let those people know how I feel.
yeah,
And despite knowing that answer for myself, I can't do it. I don't know why. And I find as though a lot of Asians struggle with that too. Looks, I just see a comment there. It was like one of our viewers is Vietnamese. And I feel as though that's common amongst Asians. Is it's so hard to express emotions toward your relationships,
yeah,
even if you know it. I don't know, but that's how I feel. I know it. I know it's a problem, and I still have a hard time
yeah.
expressing it.
No, I think you're right. Absolutely. I think that's a really good field. That's a really good sort of area to improve on for personally as well. It's just, coming from the Southeast Asian culture is like, um, you know, there's some things that are unsaid but taken for granted for sometimes as well. Um, and maybe that's part of a cultural dynamic, but yeah, that would be kind of cool to explore. If you had one day to live or one day in this world, like what would you do? That's what you're saying. You want to spend time with your family and then also express them emotionally, connect with them, I guess.
And I think the important piece is definitely spending time with them, but really communicating the fact that you feel a certain way about them and that you care about them.
Yeah,
That I think is tough. Like how can you make them know that you care?
yeah,
Sometimes verbally is um, important too. And I'll give you an example. This is so embarrassing. And I think this is one of the I didn't realize it until maybe a couple years ago, but one of my first girlfriends that I dated when I was in high school, I dated for a couple years, and again, this is me being young and stupid and not knowing much about how to express myself.
mhm.
Um, I remember one time we were at her parents' place, and her mom said, "Isn't she pretty?" And I was like, "Yeah, she's beautiful." Keep in mind, I've been dating this girl for a couple years, and she immediately broke down crying.
Wow.
Why? Why does she do that? Because she has never once heard me say she was beautiful. How
That,
terrible of a boyfriend am I for that? And that's what I'm trying to get at. Is I mean I spent time with her and all that kind of stuff, but I never was able to actually verbally say it to someone. And I think that's the key thing to know is you may be spending time with your friends and family, but let them know that you care about them. I think that's the key. And despite knowing that, like I said, I have a hard time doing it.
Yeah, that's a worthy goal. That is,
Uh-huh.
I can't beat that. That's that is a great goal. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't have an answer for that, but I feel the same way. It's something that is a challenge.
How about this? And we
Well,
have maybe 8 more minutes on the stream.
yeah.
Um, so you said you were going to go back to your family, spend more time with them if you had a day. Which family? Who in particular?
Yeah, I think it would probably be 'cause sure. I got like family here, right? My most immediate family, but I think I've got family essentially across the world, right? And
Is there someone that you haven't been as close with that you would want to?
yeah, absolutely. Like so, I would say basically my entire network of cousins who I actually grew up with, like in some in the same household back in the 80s and 90s, right? That was the thing back then in my culture, and so
Do you have a name of one or two of them?
I do, I do, yeah. Oh, so like I would probably say so they're all Indian, right? So they've got Indian names, but Sumit, Kunti, there's all these other cousins I have in overseas that I would probably just take a flight and just say, okay, I'm gonna come over. I'm just gonna like spend like some hearty meals with you, like gonna get to chat with you over like
When was the last time you saw them?
and it's been a decade, like literally it's been
A
a decade.
decade?
I mean, you think of when I graduated from pharmacy school, which was not, I mean, not very recent. It was like 2010. Since then, I've been on the grind, like it's like again going back to career has always taken precedence over life.
When was the last time you talked to them? Phone, email,
Um,
messenger, Facebook, whatever.
I would say probably at least a year or two. A year,
Hmm.
actually, I would say a year probably. Yeah, but even then, it's like that connection is not, it's not there, and it should be, So I feel like in person, I think being in person, being able to express, like again, express feelings or emotions, I think that's what we're missing. And I
Hmm.
just kind of like side note this in the U.S. Just a quick side note. Um, I have neighbors, right? Like in my neighborhood, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, and my neighbors are like Southern. They're all very friendly. They're all very approachable. And it's funny because I got a neighbor who moved behind of me, and he's from New York. And immediately, I went by his house. I rang his doorbell, and he opened the door, and he's like, "So hey, what's up?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm your neighbor. I live behind you. Just want to say hi." And he was kind of literally taken aback. He was like, I'm of course being a New Yorker, they're a little bit more standoffish. They're not used to people kind of coming to their front door and saying hello. But at the same time, it's like a minute in to the conversation, he was just like the most friendliest, nicest guy. Like he said, come in, like we'll grab a beer, we'll hang out for a bit. And I think that's unusual in the US. I think that's what not even the US. I think the context of like today, this world, we we don't make an effort to introduce that friction of you know let's kind of talk in person, let's kind of connect emotionally because technology has overtaken our lives, right? Like
Hmm.
I can send you a Facebook message or LinkedIn message almost instantaneously, and that's great. I can communicate to you, but does that really mean I'm going to emotionally connect to you? Probably it may not, right? Like it's just easy, it's convenient, and it's frictionless. And so, like, I think to your point, I think we need to add that friction, and I think I need to do that like almost immediately. Like after this call, I'm gonna call my family and be like, kind of, so sorry, and I, I wish I'd done this earlier, but I really, I feel like, and I'm gonna do it. By the way, I'm gonna tell you all about it. But I think that's what we are missing, and thanks for reminding me of it. I feel like I needed that reminder. So.
And like, so two things with that. Actually, three things I'll say. The first thing is because I've started to realize the importance of this,
Mhm.
and what we talked about habits earlier and being efficient with our time. I don't know if you saw on my calendar, I've scheduled time
Mhm.
to call family or friends to keep that relationship going because that is something I prioritize. So
Yeah.
I will have dedicated time where I don't do anything else but schedule that. The second thing is, like what we're doing now, we're sharing stories. Is one way I found to have deeper conversations with people and to let them know you care about them aside from just saying, hey, I care about you,
Mhm.
is having them share experiences. And one that happened recently was when I went home for Christmas, and had a final paper due, and I was sitting at the dinner table working on my paper when my grandma was cooking dinner, and I need to get the paper done. And she voluntarily told me a story of when she was first learning how to cook,
Mhm.
and how she didn't really know how to even boil water when she was like 23.
Right.
And I was like, I need to get this paper done. But as she started to tell me the story, I said, this paper could wait.
Right.
I shut down my computer and I listened to her story about her early 20s and early 30s, um, because that's meaningful to me. These are the experiences and stories I want to take away with me,
Right.
and have these deeper conversations with people. So that's number two. And number three is how do we build deeper conversations with the day to day like you're describing. And I think that's
Mhm.
certainly something that we've lost touch with, is when we meet people, a lot of it is surface level. Like how do we have deeper connections
Right.
and conversations with people? I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially with the forced constraint of having one day on this for. Just kidding. But no, you're right. Yeah, I think there's a lot to digest here. I'm gonna have to run with this whole day. It's gonna have to brain dump a lot of what we talked about. So thanks, Brian, for.
Yeah, it was a good conversation, and we're about almost at 2 hours. We're about to hit 2 hours, and we're gonna end the stream. But it was fun. Hopefully the people who were listening uh, enjoyed, and we'll do more of this. Right? It was fun.
Sounds like a plan.
Cool.
Get Tony and David on here soon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because now we can actually host multiple people. Now I know how to host multiple people on here, so we can bring people onto the actual chat and have a conversation with us, which could be pretty fun.
That'll be fun.
Okay, well, we'll do this maybe next time and see how it goes. All right, Beju, good chatting with you.
Sounds good. Thanks, man.
See everyone. Thanks for everyone that's listening. See you guys next time.